I still remember the way my mother-in-law used to snap her fingers at me when she needed something. "Coffee, Anna. Not too hot this time," she would bark, without even looking at me. Her voice echoed through the grand living room of the Carter mansion, a place that sparkled with chandeliers, expensive art, and too much pride. I had lived in that house for almost 2 years after marrying Ethan, their only son. From the outside, people thought I was lucky, a woman who married into wealth, privilege, and a respected business family. But inside those walls, I was treated like I didn't belong. They never saw me as family. To them, I was the help. Every morning, I would wake up before sunrise to prepare breakfast for everyone. Ethan, his parents, and even their spoiled relatives who often stayed over. I didn't complain, not once. I believed that love and patience could soften anyone's heart. But the more I tried, the more invisible I became. My husband, Ethan, was the worst of them all. He had changed completely after our marriage. The gentle man who once brought me wildflowers and whispered about dreams now avoided me like a stain on his perfect suit. He had joined his father's company, Carter Holdings, a multi-million-dollar corporation that ruled the local real estate scene. And as soon as he stepped into that world, I became nothing but his shadow. Whenever I tried to talk about my own ideas or ambitions, he would cut me off with a sharp laugh. "Anna, business isn't for people like you," he said once, sipping his imported whiskey. "Leave the thinking to those who understand numbers, not emotions." Those words hurt, not because he insulted me, but because I knew he was wrong. I wasn't just someone who understood emotions. I understood people, markets, and numbers far more than he ever did. But I kept my secret quiet, because long before I met Ethan, I had built something of my own. No one in that house knew who I really was. They didn't know that Anna Moore was only the name I used when I wanted to disappear from the corporate spotlight. That behind my quiet smile and modest clothes was the real owner of a private investment firm that had quietly acquired a controlling interest in several local businesses, including, ironically, Carter Holdings. Yes, the company they worshipped, the empire they believed they owned, was technically mine. It had started years ago, long before I met Ethan. I had inherited a small fortune from my late father, who taught me everything about business. He always said, "Real power doesn't come from showing who you are. It comes from knowing when to reveal it." So when I fell in love with Ethan, I wanted to see who he truly was when he thought I had nothing. Sadly, he showed me exactly that. The breaking point came one cold night in December. Ethan and his parents were hosting a massive dinner party for the company's biggest investors. I had spent the entire day setting tables, arranging flowers, and managing catering while wearing an apron instead of a dress. Not one of them offered to help, or even thanked me. As the guests arrived, Mrs. Carter called me over. "Anna, stay in the kitchen tonight," she ordered, her voice dripping with disdain. "We don't want you embarrassing us in front of the executives. You're good at serving. Stick to that." Something inside me snapped. I smiled politely, nodded, and retreated to the kitchen. But as I watched them from the corner of the room, laughing and sipping wine, I realized it was time to end the act. The next morning, I made one phone call, to my lawyer, James. "It's time," I said simply. He understood immediately. We'd been preparing for this moment for months. A week later, the Carter family received an official notice summoning them to an emergency shareholders meeting at the company headquarters. Ethan looked puzzled when he got the letter, muttering something about a takeover rumor. I pretended to be clueless, making him breakfast as usual, even though my heart raced with anticipation. When the day of the meeting came, they all left in a rush. I followed quietly, sitting at the back of the conference room once the meeting began. The boardroom buzzed with whispers as investors and executives filled the seats. Then the CEO, Mr. Carter himself, stood up, clearing his throat to begin. But before he could speak, the lead attorney walked in, followed by James, my lawyer. Everyone turned their heads as James spoke loudly. "Ladies and gentlemen, as of this morning, Carter Holdings is now under new majority ownership. The firm controlling 62% of the company's shares has decided to make some structural changes." Mr. Carter frowned. "And who exactly are these new investors? We were never informed of any major stock purchase." James smiled slightly and stepped aside. "You'll have your answer in a moment." That's when I stood up. The room went silent. Ethan blinked in disbelief. "Anna, what are you doing here?" I walked to the front, my heels clicking against the marble floor. My heart was pounding, but my voice was calm. "I'm here because this company now belongs to me. I'm the majority shareholder of Carter Holdings." You could hear a pin drop. Mrs. Carter gasped. "What kind of sick joke is this?" "No joke," I replied, holding up the documents James handed me. "Every acquisition was made legally over the past 5 years. I now control your company. Every decision, every project, every salary, including yours." Ethan's face turned pale. You tricked me." I met his eyes and said softly, "No, Ethan. You exposed yourself. I wanted to know if you'd still love me if I had nothing. But instead, you and your family treated me like a servant. You showed me who you really are." The executives started whispering among themselves. A few even smirked. They had seen enough of the Carters' arrogance to know karma had finally arrived. I turned to the room and continued. "Effective immediately, I'll be restructuring the leadership team. Those who've worked hard will stay. Those who've exploited others will go." Security entered the room quietly as Mr. Carter exploded in rage, shouting about betrayal and family honor. But it was over. I had won, not through revenge, but through truth. Later that evening, I stood in the same living room where I used to serve coffee. Only now it was silent. Ethan had packed his bags and left with his parents. The mansion felt lighter, almost peaceful. As I looked around, I realized I didn't hate them. I just pitied them. They had spent their lives worshiping power, while I had learned that true strength lies in humility and patience. The next morning, I visited my father's old home, a quiet place by the lake where I used to dream as a child. I sat there and whispered, "You were right, Dad. Real power isn't loud, it's steady." That day, I made a new decision. I rebranded the company under a new name, More Holdings, honoring my father's legacy. I also implemented fair policies, promoted hardworking employees who had been overlooked, and donated a portion of profits to women's education programs. A few months later, Ethan tried to contact me, begging for forgiveness. I listened quietly on the phone and said, "Forgiveness is free, Ethan. But trust? You lost that forever." Then I hung up. That night, I sat by my office window, watching the city lights shimmer like a promise of freedom. I finally felt peace, not because I had taken revenge, but because I had reclaimed my dignity. If you ever feel small or overlooked, remember this. Silence is powerful when used wisely. Sometimes the best revenge isn't to fight. It's to rise so high that those who once belittled you can only look up. Thank you for listening to my story. Dizzy. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more stories about strength, betrayal, and redemption. Sparkling Heart. Your support means everything. See you in the next story. Sparkles.